Welcome to KIMEcast, where we break through and cut the BS in sports medicine, rehabilitation, and sports performance, and talk about how things really work. All right, welcome to KIMEcast. Tony Mikla, Russ Dunning. So it's the new year. Here we go. What are we, 2 weeks in now, which is crazy to believe already. So we should be at this point where some people had started their New Year's resolutions on health and fitness, eating healthy, exercising more every day, whatever it might be. And we're probably starting to see that start to become challenging. You know, now it's, are you able to kind of keep going and keep through it? So I'm not a big New Year's resolutions guy. And I think it's a great concept that, of course, we need a reset. But I think it's a much bigger topic. Did you set a resolution?
Did not. No, I set a vision board last year, and I'm updating my vision board.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's my thought here, too. When you guys think about, like, set a New Year's resolution or what's the thing? It's for me, it's bigger than that. That I wouldn't come to the end of the year and be like, oh man, certainly I want to do some things better this year, right? No change in that. But at the end of the day, I've set a goals and a vision that's much larger, that's much more multi-year spanning. Mm-hmm. And that's a matter of taking the right steps in that direction with some regularity. Now, if I've gotten off track, I should have another indicator prior to January 1st being the trigger, mm-hmm. to really kind of get me back on track and kind of identify that and redirect and have the discipline to do so is really my take on the thing.
Well, I think the interesting thing about health and holidays is they're in conflict.
Oh, terrible.
So we have Thanksgiving, and then you have all of the sweets that somehow people love bringing you during December, and then you have the Christmas holiday, which tends to last forever. Probably the average person might have 3 or 4 different ways of celebrating that, and in days, many days.
Yeah,
so I think
meals,
from the Thursday of Thanksgiving probably to New Year's Day, you probably had the most unhealthy eating, in the concentrated 6-week span than ever. So it creates this digging of a hole.
Yeah.
That now we use the resolution to climb out.
Sure, that's how it was set. You could throw Halloween in there and really kind of get yourself even a bigger jump start if you wanted to.
Oh yeah.
Take it back a little further. But yeah, that's exactly right. I think that's how this thing started. It's like, hey, okay, we know we're going to go through a terrible 2-month window to your body, and it's dark, you can't get outside as much, like everything's kind of working against you. Like everybody gets in the doldrums and like, okay, let's turn this thing around. But you really got to be disciplined. I call that eating season. I mean, that's the season of eating, right?
Oh,
where every activity you do, you're eating with somebody. You're eating with family members, you're eating with friends, you're going out.
And it's comfort food, which maybe helps us get some blubber for the winter, surviving.
Maybe that's where it came from. Yeah. Either way, it's not a great idea. But at the same time, it's so difficult. This is a conversation we have a lot of times at home, like with my wife and stuff. It's so difficult to be social in our culture, in American culture. It's so hard to be social and to not make the bad choices, right? Everything social revolves around drinking or it revolves around eating. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's it's good food, going out, this and that. So it's like it's tasty food. Mm-hmm. And if who wants to be the one to be like, I'm just going to have this particular thing, nothing on it. You make it's like you're at Starbucks. You make all the customizations to the food. Yeah. So it's like as clean as possible. Like nobody wants to do that,
Yeah.
I talk to so many people that are like, I just don't want to be that person.
I wonder if it's different in the Southern Hemisphere when, they have the beach season that's right in the middle of, Christmas. I wonder.
Well, I don't think the food's as bad. So I don't think they have much trouble.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess.
Without getting too on a sidebar as far as food quality goes as a whole.
But you got the comfort food, the sweet, the more alcohol than we normally get, the less sunlight. It really is just a dropping of overall health.
Yeah, it's a hit for sure. So yeah, I think as far as the new year goes, when you're looking at setting these new goals, or if it's new to you and you have some fitness goals you want to set, I want to encourage you to look at a few things as opposed to saying, whatever it is, I want to drop 10 pounds or whatever. Be one more specific than that about what behaviors that you're going to change. So you can certainly have the goal and have the intention, but set it back to like, okay, what behaviors allow me to get to that point? And then do those behaviors, reward yourself for doing those behaviors in some way so that you have this regular incentive, and that we know that losing weight is a time process. Getting in shape is a time process. Changing the body in any way, it's going to take some time. Even changing from an old habit that you've formed, whether it be an 8-week-old habit or a many months old habit, that becomes hard to change as well. So set yourself with like, what is the behavior it takes for me to lose weight? Is it going to be to eat something different, which might mean that I have to prepare more meals, which might mean that I have to go to the grocery store and buy certain foods and prepare food on Sunday and prepare multiple meals going into the week, which is the best practice that I've seen as far as be able to prepare your food Sunday, spend a couple hours doing it, and then the rest of the week you have good, healthy choice food to choose from, at least through Wednesday, and then you have to kind of do it again and get through the last few days.
For sure. Well, I think those tactics work. I think there's a lot of tactics. I think men and women are quite different. I think husbands and dads might play a different role than, say, the young bucks or those in their elder years, like grandparents and such. So I think we can definitely dive into tactics. I think what's also interesting is when you set a goal, asking, why do I have that goal? And if you can't answer the why that you identify with, it just won't stick. I learned that from the book Atomic Habits. If it's not tied to your identity, it will not endure the difficulty, because changing your habits is immensely difficult. So if you just set that stage, any habit formation you have or a lack of a habit that you have, maybe the habit is being sedentary, whatever that habit is, it's going to take a mountain of effort to establish a new and improved habit. So when that difficulty comes, which is on day 7 or day 25 or day 62, when the difficulty arises, what do you lean on to help you through that difficulty? And it has to be tied to your identity. So the question is, why do we care? Why are you doing that? What about you and your persona and your personhood and your how you think about yourself? What is it?
Yeah, 1,000%. We talk about that a lot with our business and with the patients that we serve, right? Some people think, what's your goal? Well, my goal is to get my knee range of motion back to normal, or my goal is to get my strength back to normal, or my goal is to get back to be able to throw a football again or throw a baseball again. That's kind of the goal, but that's not the why. The why behind that goal, if I want to throw a baseball again, is because I want to be on that team, to be around that social environment, because that's who I am, that's how I identify, and those are my friends, and that's what I do. So there's something, it's like you don't want to throw a ball just because you want to throw a ball. You want to throw a ball because it want to get you back into that social environment that you love being around, right? That kind of helps define who you are as a person. So that's a great point.
I think there's a little bit of fear and pleasure built into this. So I think answering the why is hard for a lot of people if they've never really asked that question. So you could flip the script and have a fear perspective. What are you afraid of losing? So say we are looking about, I want to lose 10 pounds of fat and gain 10 pounds of muscle. Why? Well, I want to make sure I'm there for my kids when they play sports, or there for my grandkids when they want to go for a hike. Okay, then that's a little bit more of a father or a mother. Those are archetypes within us. The archetype that Carl Jung will speak of is that the father is also the king. The mother is also the queen. So that archetype is very powerful. We all desire to be a leader within our own family unit. We have that leadership quality deep in us that we want to portray that. And if you're tying yourself to the identity and you don't even know it, then it's okay to reflect on that. I want to be the best dad or the best mom or the best leader from my local community, whether it's your nuclear family or your greater community as a whole, your friends and loved ones and your team. So you could think of that communal size in many different ways. But if that's a strong pull for you, that you want to be the best version of yourself in that manner, then think of it like that. Because when that hurdle comes, then all you have to do is think about your kids playing sports, and it's going to get you to work in the kitchen or get you to work in the gym. Or if you're thinking about your grandkids, once again, it gets you, that identity helps you overcome that hurdle. So maybe we didn't say from a pleasure standpoint, I greatly desire to be a healthy dad and a healthy grandpa. But we did say from a fear standpoint, I don't want to lose my health because then I can't do those fun things, in that way. So either fear or pleasure will drive us to that identity. And for us to reflect on that allows us to do what David Goggins will say. He'll say, pull a cookie out of the cookie jar. He'll say, reflect on why are you doing this and tap into that mindset to overcome the difficulty, because whether it's stopping eating sugar or stop eating processed food or stop drinking alcohol, when you are face to face with that urge, you're going to need a powerful reason why. You're going to have to think of something, and it's probably not going to be analytical. It's going to have to be visual. You're going to think of yourself 10 years from now with a grandkid. can I pick them up? Or my knees and back give out. You have to think of that. And I think that visual is really where we're going to be able to change your life right now, rather than fall prey to yet another habit that you couldn't do.
Yeah, totally agree. Love it. I would think a lot about as you're setting your goals. So maybe you haven't set your goals yet. Maybe you've been struggling with this. You're like, I don't know if I'm setting goals, or like maybe you haven't thought about your big picture or your big vision. So if you are interested in health and you're just not sure what goal to set, let me bring you back to some of the key pillars in this area so that you can kind of ground yourself here a bit. So obviously more exercise or movement is an element, and it's one of the key pillars, but it's not the only pillar. And when it comes to health, it's a critical one, but it may not be the pinnacle of what if that's what you're talking about is gaining more movement, then there's probably other problems that precede that. And so you want to make sure these foundational ones are really rock solid. So the first one to talk about is stress. So your body's ability to manage stress is really what defines us as people. It's really what the body has to do to survive. And these stresses can be any number of things. It can be financial, it could be relational, it could be emotional, it could be work or social. It could be any number of things in your life that cause stress. And those stress factors have huge implications on your health. They have most of their implications probably around recovery. So you can push it, you can make it through difficult situations, you can handle difficult things, you can tolerate stress well. As it starts to mount and you start to have it go on for prolonged periods of time, and you're not as aware that this is happening to you, it really decreases your body's ability to recover.
Absolutely.
So we see this represented in a couple of different ways. Obviously, you see changes in hormone levels, you see changes in sleep patterns, you see mental changes and psychological changes with it as well. And it really impacts, like, okay, I either don't want to move anymore, or you don't move as much, or whatever it might be, or every time you move it hurts is another big one that we'll see associated with that.
Yeah, I think if you find yourself taking Tylenol and Advil on a regular basis, then it might mean that you don't have a system that deals with inflammation very well. And so then it also might mean that your stress in some way is too high. And identifying where the tactic is to improve that might be a little difficult, but it's definitely a sign that you have an opportunity to improve.
Absolutely. So think about it as a person or as a human body, everybody has a resting tone, if you will, of how your body is set. So some people are more type A personalities. Some people are a little more relaxed, passive personalities. And just that alone usually will determine a little bit about how your body carries itself. So the type of tone is like how tense your muscles are, how stiff you might be. Like for me, for example, like I come off as usually pretty passive, pretty relaxed, pretty calm, but I have a lot of stiffness in the body, but I don't hold a lot of tension in the body. But I'm not a fan of like massage or things like that. That just drives me nuts. Like it doesn't give me any kind of relaxation to have someone applying like massage to me at all, because I can mentally get to a recovery state in a different way. Mm-hmm. But for somebody else, if your tissue or your body is at a rate where you have a tone that you're holding that has tissue tension and you feel it, and massage is a tool that you can use to kind of break that stress, it needs to be more than just break it in the moment, but can it break it on more of a like progressive scale so that you can get over the hump and actually start to be able to get moving again.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, there's been a fascination with red light. There's a fascination with sauna. There's a fascination with cold plunge. There's a fascination with taking, herbal roots and different teas. I think there's a proper fascination with circadian rhythms. And all of these have shown to have modulations of what we call vagal tone. Your 10th cranial nerve is your vagus nerve, and it has a wonderful influence through our body that ties our brain to our heart and our lungs. And we can influence that with breath. We can influence that with, good thinking and a meditative thought or a gratitude journal. And we'll see the impact it has on our heart rate and on our greater physiology. So the tone of which we operate and how we dive deeper into fight or flight with it, which is a hyper stressful response, versus a more parasympathetic tone, which is more of a relaxing and oddly enough digestive but adaptive tone that allows us to recover and allows us to sleep effectively. These tones are not like a light switch. It's not like it's on or off. They're constantly micro-modulated, even within each breath to breath and heartbeat to heartbeat. But they also have greater tones, depending on, is it Monday? Do we have deadlines this Friday? Am I at a soccer game? So there's a lot of influences here, and it's not like we always want to be relaxed, nor do we want to be always stressed and excited. You want this, oddly enough, beautiful blend.
Yeah, you want these fluctuations. And you guys know what it is. Like, this is a situation where you're like last week, for example, for me, it was probably the busiest week of the year for me with all the stuff we were preparing for from a business standpoint. So on top of that, coaching my son's team, which took up quite a few practices, we played games. And on top of that, like coming off of the holiday season and just being busy. So I was definitely more on edge last week than I normally would have been. So my tone was much higher. There wasn't a whole lot of space between, everything's cool and, we're at the top. Like, we're definitely towards the upper edge of like, all right, this, shit's about to hit the fan. And if someone puts me over the top, it could be a little bit too much. But I knew that going into the week, just like people know that, right? When you're usually when you're in these areas of stress or you feel like you're on edge or being pushed over the top. And that's when your tone levels are really, really high. But you should be able to identify that, recognize it in yourself, and be able to do something to get it down. Like on any regular day, if you looked at your heart rate, say you were wearing a watch or whatever and measuring your heart rate, you should be able to, within a matter of a minute or two, be able to get your heart rate to change. Ideally, drop it probably 3 to 5 beats in a very rapid period of time. Like, I know for myself, if I measure my own heart rate, I can easily do a few things. I can go into a certain mental state. I can take a few breaths, and I can get that under control, and I can drop it by easily 5 beats, no problem. And it's resting at like between 56 and 59 usually. So it's not like I'm doing from like 100 to 95, Mm-hmm. But can you do that?
It was a very fun time when I was tracking HRV. So I went through a wave of like, all right, I'm gonna do my heart rate variability at like 6 a.m. I wake up, I lie down, I put my watch on. All right, let's look at my heart rate. And you have to see your heart rate, more or less beat to beat. And I would try my hardest to see how far I could spread it. And so as I breathed in, it would go up. So I'd try and see if it could go up to like 58. And as I breathe out, then I'd drop it and I'd try and see if I can go to 48. So I was trying to separate as much as I can, and it was a really oddly fun game. So I found
we did this in a class.
Yeah.
We did this with the group in the class. We took like 5 or 10 minutes. We had like 40 people in the room, laid them all down.
Yeah.
And then play with their heart rate like this.
I think it's a fun skill because, drop your heart rate. Well, how do I do that? Figure it out.
Yeah, that's exactly, and that's the message. Just figure it out. Some people it's breath work. Some people it's lying down. Some people it's mentally they can just be able to do it mentality wise. But you have to find out what works for you and what thoughts mentally help you get there. Sometimes we say to somebody and it freaks them out and their heart rate goes up. They're like, oh shit, that just got worse because I got stressed about the concept.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. And when you start to realize how you react to these different stimuli, then you start to see how the stress can mount on your body and how you're not controlling it. But if you recognize how your body responds to stress and these different stimuli, and you start to realize, hey, I have a role here. I can do something to control it. And then you know what buttons to press. And I think that's the art of meditation. However you describe it, whatever it is for you, it's your ability to kind of rest and recover, be able to control that heart rate. Like yoga says, get one with your breath. But I think those are the true goals of stress management. One is not only be able to identify the stressor and then either put it in check or understand that it's there and then have a strategy around, okay, I know that that's there and I can't do anything about it. If that's the case, I'm going to do these things so that I can increase my ability to respond to that or increase my ability to counter that stress that's coming at me.
This is where I do think a lot of people get the wrong impression by trying to be very healthy for 2025 is they say, I'm going to do all these like 5 things. I'm going to eat like this. I'm going to work out every day at 5 a.m. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go here. And by not paying attention to, frankly, their mindset, their vision, their psychology of the whole makeup, they're going to hyper-stress their way into an injury. And we see this because around early February, we'll see a lot of injuries that are tied to some New Year's resolution, playing pickleball for 6 hours every day, and if you almost try, oddly enough, if you try too hard and you push your brain too hard and you don't allow yourself to be human and allow yourself to adapt and recover, you wind yourself into a tissue strain, a tendon strain, a backache, something.
Yeah. We see that when stress levels are higher, injury levels go up. I'm not sure how much research there is on that, but I can tell you clinically it's absolutely true and it's absolutely there.
They tie it to stress. If they can tie it to stress with a college team, then you know it's somewhat true for everyone because they've got the youngest body, the most vitality, the youngest DNA, the best expression of athleticism, and yet they'll still find a massive difference between the athlete that sleeps 7 hours and the athlete that sleeps 9 hours. And you want to make the quickest change on the stress of your body, sleep less. That's it.
Yep. Yeah. Which is pillar number 2. So pillar number 1 there was stress management. Number 2 would be sleep. Now, if you have a stress problem and you can't calm yourself down,
boom.
Now you can't sleep. All right. So now this is where you can't sleep at night, and this is probably the biggest factor in overall health. That if this doesn't work for you, if you can't sleep, it's really hard to do the rest of the things well. If you can't sleep, that means you're up more. You're going to be hungry. Your body is going to, your metabolism is not going to slow down. It's going to be at a rate where you're going to be more hungry. So then you're going to more likely to eat more poor foods. You're not going to be able to recover to allow your hormone changes to happen so you can actually go through a proper circadian rhythm and hormone cycle. So your stress level will not be able to be managed. And then you'll be so fatigued you won't be able to exercise or do the right movement. So this particular pillar affects all of the other ones probably the most. So the research is very quite strong here that for an adult, 7+ hours of sleep per night from a healthy standpoint is really non-negotiable. So if you're sleeping less than 7, you're saying, I'm killing it and doing great, more power to you. That will probably change at some point in your life. And I know plenty of guys who are very, very high performers who do amazing stuff and they sleep 4 hours a night and it's unbelievable. But I also know that they pay for it.
They do. They pay for it in the worst way.
Yeah, and it's usually you find out about that around 55 to 65.
Yep. Your heart, your brain, your skeleton, your cartilage.
Yeah, it's not there. This is what we see. Like this is what's associated with most of the problems is either less sleep or intermittent sleep that we see with the shift work is a big problem. So like fire, police, the firefighter death rate is extremely high. It's usually not because of fire and smoke. It's because of this intermittent sleeping pattern that they have is the main philosophy that gives them this high risk of heart attack in such a young ages after their time. It's amazing, and it's sad, but that's the way the industry is designed. Maybe that should be changed. But at the end of the day, that's one of the associated problems. So finding a way to get sleep is huge. It's easier said than done, obviously. You don't really want to be able to stress about it. That just makes it a lot worse. I found most people, the more they talk about sleep, is the harder it is. But you have to do the right behaviors around sleep to be able to do it. So how do you plan your day so that you can start to rest and recover and get your heart rate under control, calm yourself down as the evening comes or as the night comes so you can get to that position? Or what's your plan like for tomorrow so that you're okay to shut it down and then start something tomorrow and know what you're going to get into?
The best phrase I read from a book called The Power of When is it's called sleep pressure. And pressure implies that it has to build. And you start building it right when you wake up. So when you get outside, get some morning light on your eyes, go for a walk, busy your body, do some things, you're starting off the day with building a little bit of pressure early on. And then that pressure increases. So really, you do have to earn your way to being tired. If your day is fairly sedentary, you might find it very hard to go to sleep. And that's the catch-22. You do this over and over and over again. You feel too tired and too fatigued and too worn out to do something during the day, but then you didn't get tired enough, so you can't fall asleep. Talk about a catch-22.
Yeah, it's fun. I've had that happen to me. So I sleep tremendously well, thank goodness. And I feel like it's been a skill of mine my whole life. Maybe part of this is genetic, I would assume. My mom, if she sits down, she's out. If you want to sit down and watch a movie, you might have 15 seconds. She fell asleep in Jurassic Park in the theater when I was a kid. I was like, how are you? This movie is shaking the room. That was back in the day. But I think that the same, I found this myself. If I have, on the weekend, if I actually take a day off mentally and separate myself from work and I really don't have any responsibilities whatsoever, I'm really not tired at the end of that day.
Yeah.
Versus a work day, once I'm similar, let's sit down, lay down, 9 o'clock, 9:30, whatever, out. No problem at all when I'm thinking. So I found that to be true, that whether you're mentally focused and demanding on your body or you're physically demanding on your body, I like that idea of putting pressure. That makes sense.
Sleep pressure, it builds first thing.
Yeah.
Even if you're tired, doesn't matter. Start moving. You'll build pressure.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I think there's something out there on people too, like they really get nervous about the next day, or like, am I going to get all this stuff done? And if that's the case, then you guys have to make a list, make your to-do list, make your flow. Like, okay, these are the things I want to get done. This is the time in which I'm going to do them. Allocate the right resources to do so. And then you'll know that you have the availability to do it. You know?
Yeah, I think it's very powerful. If you say something and express it, you allow yourself to process it in a different way simply by hearing it. And I think the same is true in writing something down, where you make a list. If it's a list on your phone or your laptop, or you're writing on paper, by writing it out, you are putting that in to say, this is organized. I don't need to think about it anymore because I already set a plan. So you process things by not just letting it bounce in your head. You either have to say it and you reprocess that way, or you have to write it and put it out in the physical world, and then it's processed in that way. And it allows you to not stop the ping pong in the head.
Yeah. I'll say this too on that note, that I think my approach to sleep is so strong that I say, like, I did this in college. Like, if we would study for a final or something like that, I knew that if I slept, I would perform better on the test just because my cognitive ability would be sharper, that I would figure out the answer rather than staying up all night trying to cram for it, right?
Yeah.
Which obviously is a wrong choice. So, I mean, you should be studying prior, but nonetheless, you guys all do the same thing. So, but that I do prioritize sleep heavily, to be like, hey, if I got to do something big, or I'm not sure what to do tomorrow, and if I get good sleep, my ability to make good decisions the next day is so much better and so much stronger, that for me, that's a really powerful tool. It gives me the confidence to know that, hey, sleeping is actually better for me than trying to stay up and do something at a 50% energy level.
Oh yeah.
So,
all my kids and my wife will say I'm a sleep Nazi. When it comes to like 8:30 at night, all right, let's start working our way upstairs. And if they dilly-dally, I'm on them. It's like, no, I wasn't kidding. Let's go. And I'm very adamant about, like, lights out at a certain time, at least during the week. For the weekends, I'm a little more lax. But because I know, like, tomorrow's going to suck unless you go to bed this time. That's just how the body works. If we push it, or if you stay up late at a friend's house, like, that's okay, but we're going to make up for it tonight. So I'm pretty mindful. I think, I think it's the one thing that parents do, that my parents taught me that. Be on it with what time you go to bed, what time lights are out. And I think we are on threat more these days because it's so easy to get blue light on our eyes. It's digital light. It's so easy to, thumb through some text messages or do something with your phone. More on threat than ever. And I think that stimulates your brain the wrong way, particularly in the last, hour to 2 hours of sleep, or right before you go to bed, the last 2 hours of the night. So it's science of that is tremendous. Yeah. I think on both fronts, people don't understand the counter to that, which is when you get up in the morning, as you just said with the sleep pressure idea, that you're starting putting pressure on your body to want to sleep again right away, is get outside, see the sunlight. I think that's something we probably don't get enough of. People, they get up, probably shower, whatever. Maybe they get some breakfast. Maybe they don't. A lot of people don't eat breakfast. I'm a huge breakfast guy, but you got to see the sun like as soon as possible, I would say. Mm-hmm. I've also heard that you need to eat like typically very early. Like that's the whole reason why it's called breakfast, is to break the fast. But there's different variations on that idea. But I think the light for sure is a big one. If you can get sunlight early in the day, get into some sunlight throughout the day, because it's so deprived from us. When you're in an office building or you're in your car or whatever, you're just not getting the same exposure. But to actually go get in the sunlight is a really big deal, especially in the morning. And then even to see the sun go down or get outside when it's dark is equally as effective to kind of get your body thinking it's time to shut it down and go to bed. Because there's lights like TV light or iPhone light or whatever is this blue light, and the evidence around that is just absolutely tremendous. How detrimental that is to your cycle. Imagine that 800,000 years of development. We have sensors in our eyes that can tell whether or not it's a 7 a.m. sunlight or it's a 5 p.m. sunset. How about that? What a smart system.
There's a reason for that. Okay, so that's two main pillars. You have your stress management pillar, your ability to tolerate stress, and then you have your sleep pillar, which is very important, 7+ hours. And then you kind of move into nutrition as the other fundamental element, that you have to have solid food source and get the food that you need to supply what you're doing. So I think since a lot of people set goals of weight loss during this time of year, and we just talked about the poor eating and stuff of that type of the season that we're kind of trying to get away from, the thing I'd like to talk about here more than anything would be understand that the food you put in your body is a fuel. And if you're aligning your goal with exercise and more movement, eating less and moving more is going to be a very, very difficult concept for your body to tolerate. Mm-hmm. You need calories and you need energy to move more. And when you go exercise and you lift weights especially, or you work yourself at a fairly hard level, you're going to find that you're going to get much more hungry. And it's going to really make it difficult for you if you set an eating goal that you're going to eat less or you're going to fast or something, or do an intermittent fasting. That's a very difficult to tie with an increased level of movement.
Absolutely. I think there's a little bit of math here that can help people. You can ask your AI bot of your choice, or you can ask a great nutritionist or a functional health doctor, maybe a physical therapist. But you look at your body mass, you multiply that by 10. That's a fairly good guess about how much calories it takes to run your body. Now, if you walk around for, 1 mile throughout the day or a few thousand steps, you got to add, 1 or 2 or 300 calories for walking around. But most people's basal metabolic rate that accounts for living, general sedentary activity, plus a little bit of walking, might be anywhere from 1,300 to 1,800 calories. That's the majority of people that are middle-sized people. If you work out on top of that, if you work out for an hour, it's reasonable to burn 300 or 400 calories. If you're challenging your muscles a lot and enduring some muscle stress and some micro tears at your muscle to try and make them more enhanced vitality or grow them, get bigger muscle, you're going to need to really jack up the protein a little bit more. And if you don't pay attention to those and rather take an extreme deficit either on the protein front or on the total caloric front, you're going to feel very wiped out, might lead to injury, might lead to fatigue, might lead to depression. You're going to feel very unwell. You might not be able to sleep very well. So for those people who are doing extreme caloric deficit, like 1,000 calories, 800 calories in the day to try and lose a lot of weight in a hurry, what happens when you rush with the weight loss is your body will not bias purely fat. You'll probably blend. You'll probably eliminate just as many pounds of fat as pounds of muscle. And that's where the yo-yo begins. The yo-yo dieting is, I'm going to lose 20 pounds inside 2 months. You did it, but you just cut into your muscle, which means it cut into your metabolism. Think of it like if you had a particular size engine for your car, you just downgraded your engine. Now you try and return back to the same normal of eating, and all of a sudden you gain weight. Well, it's because your engine's smaller. That's number one. Number two is by stressing your system to that degree, your body thought it was dying. So it didn't know what to do. Started freaking out, which means your stress hormones skyrocketed. Now you try and eat normal. Your body says, F this, I don't want to die tomorrow, so I'm going to park all of that food into some fat for extra storage because I need some more storage just in case this idiot does this shit again.
Whatever just happened might happen again.
So both from the stress hormone standpoint and from your metabolism standpoint, you're more or less effed. So when you're doing extreme caloric deficits, you need to be super mindful of modest activity, enough protein, and really like looking at the numbers. Like if you're hitting that low of a number, if your goal is 20 pounds in 2 months, I would say change the goal. I found a great formula is 1 pound a week. It's reasonable to burn 1 pound of fat a week. No more. Don't do more than that. 4 pounds in a month is a tremendous effort. Whenever people say like, "Oh, I crushed it. I burned 15 pounds this month," I think you overdid it. So if you aim for 4, that's sustainable. That meant that you protect your metabolism, you cut out some body fat with doing some healthy things, eliminate all the bad foods that you already know what they are, and then you moved often, and that's sustainable so that your body can get used to that, and then you can do it again, and you can continue in that path with a very modest decrease. But if you just do too much too soon, it tanks you, and now GLP-1s. And all of the the peptide therapies out there that crush people's diet, you have to be mindful now more than ever because what those therapies do is they make it so that you're not hungry because it slows your digestive system. Mm-hmm. So when you do that and you're only eating 800 calories in the day, you'll lose weight. And I just hope you don't lose muscle in the process because that's really hard to get back. It's like 8 times harder to gain muscle than it is to lose muscle. Ask any 16-year-old in football trying to gain muscle. Is it hard to gain muscle? Hell yes, it is.
It's a tremendous amount of work. Your body, it's the most expensive fuel for your body, so it doesn't want to build muscle. It's once it has muscle, it's very expensive, so it wants to lose it if it doesn't need it. This is why we see if you're resting or you 3 days of bed rest or you go up to the space station, you lose so much muscle mass. It's 40, 50% of muscle mass in just a few days because it's so expensive for your body to want to get rid of it. Remember the Biggest Loser, that show, The Biggest Loser? It was a great show. It's crazy.
It was crazy.
Yeah, you see, Jillian Michaels now is getting big on all the food stuff as well. In the Washington, she's becoming an advocate for all of that. But I remember one of the biggest things they used to do with this show was that, people would get on, and then the first week they would do this exactly what you just said. They would kill them with let's go to the treadmill, exercise, boom, blow them up. They lose 17, 18, 20 pounds. These people are 400 pounds, but they were only 30 years old. And then week 2. None of them would lose a pound. Some of them would gain even a pound. They'd be 0, -1, +1. They'd have almost no change from the prior week. And that was the phenomenon. They call it the week 2 phenomenon. And then after that, week 3, week 4, they'd get back into somewhat losing a little bit again because they sustained it. But it's exactly as you spoke. When the body gets shocked with this new change, be ready for it to revolt back and say hey, this is not the environment I'm used to. I've been trained to be a certain way. And now I've got this. Now I've got this new stimulus. It's this is shock. I'm not going to adapt to that stimulus. That stimulus is out of the blue. It was crazy. What the hell was that?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to put up a shield and kind of block and be okay, we don't want to do that again. And then, but as you continue to give it the same stimulus, then it will start eventually to adapt over time, thinking okay, this is my new environment. I need to get used to this. I need to make adaptations now to the new environment as opposed to just the shock. So I think be aware of that as you get into this kind of week 2, week 3, week 4 of this movement goal. If you've kind of shocked your system and had some great gains and then they start to peter out a little bit, that's not the time to back off and get frustrated.
All right, quiz time, Tony. What do you think the percent of contestants of The Biggest Loser regained their weight over time?
That's a high number.
I just did a query, so here's the question.
92%.
Damn, you're pretty good. 80 to 90% of contestants. 80 to 90. So yeah, 90%, they regained it. So only 10% could keep it off. And the why is what we're speaking of. So if you're mindful of how the system needs to endure stress.
They went back to the lifestyle that they had.
Yeah.
Or they went back to the environment they were in.
Yeah. And I think what's worse is when they gained that 90% back, I think it was in the most unhealthy way, meaning let's just say they drop 30 pounds of fat and 30 pounds of muscle. I think when they get it back, they're going to get about 55 pounds of fat. Now they're worse off. So I do think they were worse off by going through that transformation. You might think, oh, good job, you got all the weight. Maybe, you got some back on, but at least you're down 10 pounds net. Not really. If you tanked your muscle mass, you'll have less of life. You'll be less functional. I think you'll live less life.
Isn't that crazy? That you could go through that process. I don't know what it is, 16 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
You can go through that process, have that much success. These people are losing 200-300. They're losing more than a person, 200 or 300 pounds. From 400 to 150 pounds. Could you imagine learning how to eat? Everything's taken care of for you. They had PTs. I knew people that were on the PT team that was in the background of this, right? So they have all this medical care for you as well. They have, you're getting hydration properly. You're getting coached constantly. You're working out. You're learning how to do fitness. You're learning how to eat properly. You're learning how to take care of your body. This elite camp for 4 months. And you know it all. And then when you go back to the environment you were in, how you just gravitate back to the old habits.
Yeah.
And even though you have all this knowledge,
yeah,
you can't break the system to apply it. I think it's absolutely phenomenal.
Well, that speaks to going back to the New Year's resolution. I think the majority of these new habits that people create, overwhelming majority, don't stick. And so the real question is well, what makes this New Year's resolution or this improvement of your vision or this new goal of yours? Why are you succeed when most of the time people fail? I think it's just general in life, but it just happens to be January, so we get to talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean that ability to stay disciplined, but disciplined to what? To your point, why is that important to you?
Yeah,
and just being lean doesn't mean that you're healthy, But what is it Why is it important for you to be healthy? What does that give you? And then pursue that with some purpose.
Yeah.
But it's got to be a big deal because it's hard. I think it's hard when this country is really, really hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep your stress level down.
Yeah.
Just getting on the freeway or getting on any road, it goes up, right? And then everybody at work, there's lots of pressures to perform. So there's huge stresses there. Food is impossible in this country. We've talked about that many times in the past. It's so difficult to eat well. It's so difficult to eat like fresh, healthy things. It's so difficult to move.
Well, I have a patient who just went through a round of PRP injections in his spine. He's a fairly healthy 60-year-old, very avid golfer. I see him often, and he and I have deep trust. I can speak to him quite candidly and honestly. And he went through this round of injections for his back. He's got like generalized stenosis and some back pain. And, he asked, all right, Russ, what's the game plan? All right, game plan is I want you to improve your sleep, improve your nutrition, and I want you to do these things, and I want you to do these stretches. And so 2 weeks later, he's like, Russ, I really want this to succeed. Oh, okay. All right. So we're going to improve sleep. You're going to improve nutrition. You do these stretches. And he looked at me like, yeah, I'm doing that. I'm like, are you? I said, oh, how many drinks of alcohol did you have 2 nights ago? He's like, well, yeah, I like to drink. I have fun. I have a lot of friends. Like, no, I'm serious. I want you off. I want you off alcohol for the month. If not, just have like a little bit of tequila or vodka with tonic, 1 shot. That's it. I got one drink a week. That's it. You really want to do well with this? Let's eliminate all stress on your system. That's a stressor. Let's get it out. And then I also, of course, convinced him to get a glucose monitor. I said, you're going to live underneath this. So I want you to stop eating the shitty processed food, which we took out some of the processed foods. And I have his monitor to assess that. And then he just got to be honest with me about alcohol. And I probably said to him 3 times, he's like, I really want this to succeed. And I said, yeah, and I'm serious. I really want you to succeed too. You're going to do these things. And he reported back to me the other day. He just came in actually today. He said, Russ, we went out Saturday night. We went out with some friends. I didn't have a single bit of alcohol. I had a great time having fun. Everyone was trying to pressure me. And he said, no, this is what I'm doing. This is the game plan. And I was so proud of him in that moment because he finally took a very old and bad habit and then faced it head on. Like, now he's got to face that about 100 times before it's like really, really solid.
Yeah.
But that's the meat of it that most of us can't come to grips with, that when it is time for a little bit of alcohol or a little bit of sugar, a little bit of sweet, a little bit of processed food, or going out to eat, which is completely effed up, that's where where we meet our demon.
Yeah.
Right there. It's because a lot of people think like, well, it's just 1 drink. It's just 1 Oreo. It's just 1 pizza. Like, you could say just 1 1,000 times. It's not just 1 anymore. It's your whole damn lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. No one likes that moment when you say, well, you fill out this nutrition form about what you've ate for the last 48 hours. That's a painful
one. They always say, like, well, that's not a good representation. F that, I hear it every time. I always hear the last 24 hours is a good representation. When is?
Yeah, it's the
best representation.
It's the same answer every time. We dove into this so deeply. Like, how do we help people with nutrition? How do we, objectify nutrition, right? Because there's so many things, and these monitors weren't around when we were having all these conversations a couple years ago. So this would be more helpful to have the monitors now. But what we ended up landing on, remember the conversation? We dove into this really deep. Like, how could we take a gym membership of 300 people and say is your nutrition good, bad, or poor? Right? Well, how can we rank it? And how can we objectify it? And we asked what if we did this nutrition thing? They're just going to lie. Oh. They know what to put on there. Forget it. What if we, ask them these facts about nutrition? Did they know these stats? They know these pieces of data? Do they know these numbers? Because if they knew it, then they would more likely make a good choice, was the idea. And then, you came up with this idea, you're what if we just had them bring in their grocery receipts?
Yes.
Or credit card statement.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty real. But then we're well, then they're going to have 2 receipts. They're going to have they're going to have the receipt for the food that you're supposed to see. And then they're going to put all the crap in the second thing and tell the person I need to make a separate account. That's a separate charge, So we're that may not work. But then we've learned that we actually did that with some people, and people still put the shit in there.
Yeah,
people bag of licorice and all this stuff. We're what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you
turned
doing?
This in and you knew it's on here. What are you doing? Do you want me to give you an excuse?
Well, every time at the grocery store, I look over at everyone there, and I want to ask these people, do you have any goals in life? Because I promise you, they're not being improved by what you have. If you have a business goal, a relationship goal, you want to have sex more, you want to have fun with your grandkids, you want to be more active, I promise you, it's not in your cart right now. Any goal, pick one. Better cognition. I want to remember better. Not that food.
Yeah.
And so once we think that all food is tied to every goal a human could set. Like, name one. If your brain depends on it, your skeleton, your muscles, your heart, it's tied to nutrition.
Yeah.
Oh,
we ended up coming down to the decision we made because even the receipt was a little dicey, but people were more honest than we thought they would be, which was great. But we ended up saying you need to just take a picture of the fridge.
Yes.
And a picture of the pantry.
Yep.
And if you send us those two things, we'll make a judgment call.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to hide all the chips. You're not going to hide all the like pantry. The pantry should be very clean, very
lean. Yeah.
Should be very small. You don't need a whole walk-in closet, you know. And then the fridge should be, you know, self-explanatory.
Yeah, organized because it's flushing out each week.
Yeah.
If it's chaotic, like, are you enduring that chaos every week? That means you're not eating out of your refrigerator. Period. And then someone says, "Oh, you're right. I don't cook a lot of my food." Bingo.
There you go. There's the problem.
So
that they teach themselves or come up with their own explanations in this process.
Yeah. Whenever if I talk about like sugar or vegetable oils with someone, if you're eating out a lot, like, oh, that's tanked. I promise you, most of what you eat's like it's all caked in. That's why it tastes so good.
Yeah. We went down the list. I mean, we tried all kinds of stuff, surveying people, and then even this idea of pictures. We ended up not doing it because it was hard to sustain and keep it up. We would probably do it now with AI and say, take a picture and I would tell you what's good and bad in there, I'm sure.
Well, I saw the glucose of my patient today and I said, it's okay. I give you a grade of like a C. He goes, well, what do I need to do? Like, do all the things. How long do I need to do it for? For a while.
Forever. So the monitoring blood live, I think that's a game changer for sure.
Like next
it's
level.
such a good feedback tool, and it's been really enlightening. I remember we talked when we were doing that heart rate reduction when we did that in one of our bulletproof courses. I talked about how I had alcohol that night before, and my heart rate was up by 10 beats all night long, which I thought was surprising. Like when you start watching like what's going on, and you really kind of see it. Using these different monitoring devices, that's a big one. It tells you right there, you're not going to sleep well, you're not going to recover well, and that night cost me probably several more, which Saturday did as well. But nonetheless, at least I know it's coming. But you mentioned something the other day about like if you have a glucose spike, then that might cost you a week.
Yeah. It throws you for longer than you think. Yeah. It's not like, oh, I'm done with that food. It's exited out of me. It doesn't affect me anymore. No, your cells are impact of, much longer than a day or two. It has really harmful effects that like bleed over. So if you eat unhealthy Friday night and Saturday, it's possible that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are not great. And
I think it's a powerful thought because a lot of people think, it's just today. It's my Saturday. And this goes back to, so many times we're talking with trainers and with coaches, and people will do good. They'll like do good for like Monday through Friday, and then they'll just destroy themselves Saturday. So they go out, they'll have a glass of wine, they'll go out to eat, and then they wonder why they can't lose weight.
Yeah.
And as you shared that, it's like that might be one of the reasons as well, is that like just that behavior throws off the system for the remaining days where things to get back on track Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but they're not on the right, you're not on the right path.
Well, I've said this quote before, and because I have fun with the quote because I'm in my mid-40s, I can have fun with this quote. But the quote's by Carl Jung. And Carl Jung, this is like 100 years ago, he said, life begins at 40. Up till then, it's just research. These days, with the help of my AI agents and the help of different, I've read a lot of books in the last like 10 years, maybe like, 150 or 200 books. So I'm not so sure if it's the books or if it's my age, or if it's, I barely have any alcohol these days, because I reflect back on my 20s, and I so wish that I had better knowledge in my 20s. Because I look back at my 20s, I'm like, I'm not so sure I was that smart in my 20s. And not to say I'm smart right now, but I'm gaining information at a rate that I love. I'm really enjoying how well my brain works every day of the week. And I do think part of it's because I have like virtually zero alcohol. So if, I used to drink a lot Friday night and Saturday night, like back in my 20s, and I don't think my brain worked well, probably till the following Thursday. So I might have had one day of the week where it was like, this is a good day. I'm thinking about my life. Now, like every day, I feel like I'm in a creation mode. And I do wonder if it's the elimination of all these extra sugars in our life, of the elimination of all the rancid oils, the elimination of most of the alcohol in my life, and if that allows my brain and body to operate better than it was 20 years ago. And I'm in my mid-40s, and I'm training against guys who are, out of college. I was training. I went head-to-head with one of the Sac State Combat U guys, and I felt fine, and I felt just as fast as him and just as conditioned. And I am wondering, like, this age thing, granted, I've only in my mid 40s, but I don't think it has to hit us nearly as early as what people say. I think if we pay attention to nutrition and sleep and train in a smart way, we could stay pretty young for longer than we think.
Yeah, I think stress is in there too, I have to say. I see some people that have made it a long time in life not doing great nutrition at all, but they sleep well and they have no stress. And they do just fine.
Yeah.
I think those are big kickers to consider. I don't know. Genetic code plays a role too.
Well, I've seen people who've, say, lost a loved one, and they can age really quickly.
Yeah.
Or endure some nasty hardship, and you age really quickly.
Yeah.
And
your mental approach to, the bigger part of stress is like your mental approach to life is having purpose, all that stuff has a big impact. Okay, let's talk about movement. So the fourth pillar being movement. And, we can do this till we're blue in the face, but I think the biggest thing here, back to the why. I had a conversation with a young man this morning, and we were talking about fitness and exercise and training, and he's pretty passionate about those things. And then we look back, we were talking about, hey, it's great to like lift, and I give this advice to especially to men, where they're wanting to. You grew up wanting to lift heavy, so you grew up like in high school and maybe into college. You're like, how much can you bench? How much can you squat? Maybe you were deadlifting at that time, maybe not, but there was a lot of load on your body, and you're really encouraged to use a barbell and do these heavier things. And that carries through, like we see it all day long. Like if you're a 50-year-old male in the gym today, you still have the same idea. Like I'll put more on I used to squat 225, 300, I'll do that again now. If that's what you're doing, I guess it's fine, as long as everything else that was the same as it was when you were 18 is still there. Mm-hmm. So if you have the same tissue, if you have the same sleep pattern where you're sleeping 11 hours a night, that's great. If your testosterone level is the same level that it was when you were 18, that's great. If you don't have any stresses on your body because you just go to school and it's quite easy.
No injuries.
You don't have any injuries. And then, you don't have to work. So you haven't really stressed about money or having a house or rent or any of these other or a relationship. You're just kind of whatever it is. Then probably that being the only stress on your body is probably a very appropriate load.
Yeah.
But the conversation I had with him today is like, since we know none of those are true, and you're only 35, let's look at what is true. And what's true now is that you sit most of the day. And you're not training for a sport. You're not out running. You're not out getting light. You're not out, changing direction. You're not having to do the skills of sport, throwing a ball, catching it, in your case, doing jiu-jitsu or something, and engaging with another person, having to react to a stimulus. We don't do those things on like a daily basis. It just doesn't happen. I think this is one of the biggest effects of aging. And if you're going to go get into fitness and start your movement journey and go get into the gym, that doesn't happen there either. You're going to lift in a very like routine, like linear progression where you're going to push things or pull things or squat things or deadlift things, but it's pretty much in a single line or single plane of motion. It's not like, if you haven't been exercising, it's not like you're going to go out and like, start doing rotational cable rows or something. You're probably going to do some bench, you're going to do some regular rows or whatever. So my encouragement is have some balance to what you're doing. Think about what the body's designed to do, what it responds the best to, and it likes these different stimuli where you need to play some sort of sport or activity in conjunction with going to the gym and, hey, I'm just going to lift weights 3 days a week.
I think the best activities have a blending of dynamic motion and some sweating.
Yes.
And maybe you don't notice your sweat because it's outside, maybe it's windy, whatever, but getting your heart rate up, and so that enough energy is produced so that you get really hot, like, oh, I'm sweating a little bit. It could be pickleball, tennis, go for a hike, something that's really active that gets your heart rate up. And if it's dynamic, you get so many awesome things embedded in that. If it's not terribly dynamic, then you got to bring more dynamic movement back in. And so I think I see the three buckets: movement, strength, and more or less cardio. And you can blend them. I think it's really fun to blend them. I think a typical HIIT class might be blending strength and conditioning. I think going to play tennis might blend movement and conditioning. So you kind of have to look at how you do things, but you do need to appreciate the quality of your movement, to some degree how strong you are in a universal full body way, and then get your heart rate raised. Think of it as heart health. We also call it cardio, but I just think of it as time to get a sweat.
Yeah, the cardio is the wrong word. I agree. It was too abused a long time ago. I think heart health is a better way to look at it, because that's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. I love that about the sweating. I think that's the real deal. If you ask a person, when's the last time you broke a sweat? And they can't tell you a time within the last week or the last month. I could see people like for years that maybe haven't broken like a real sweat. Like I went out and worked so hard, I was sweating and my shirt was wet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like that's a scary thought.
Yeah,
and it's a lot. It's by far the majority of the people.
Yeah. It's pretty important. And then you ask, what does it take to do that? Getting your heart rate at least up to the higher aerobic realm. So a lot of people reference zone 2 training. So zone 2, if you want to have a quick, dirty math of where your heart rate should be, you take 180 minus your age. If you can get your heart rate somewhere in that realm. So I'm 43 years old, so 180 minus my age is 137. So if I can get my heart rate into the 130s, this is probably still an aerobic experience, but it's on the upper end. Another way of saying that is when I'm working at that capacity, I might have a hard time talking, but I should be able to hold somewhat of a conversation. If I take my heart rate into the 150s, it might be very hard to hold a conversation at that point. But it's on the upper end. That creates a sweat. If I get my heart rate up to 100, maybe it's not really that much of a sweat. But if you get your heart rate in the upper zone 2 and you sustain it for more than, say, 15, 20 minutes, you will have a light sweat. Now we're in that bucket, and obviously we could excel in that bucket, but it's a very important bucket.
Let's talk about that for a moment too. I think a lot of people get misdirected on that. Is that I need to do an hour-long cardio session because I need to be in zone 2 for the whole hour. Because I read that if I'm working at 70% of my max for a prolonged period of time, that's my best fat burning zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it can be fat burning depending on really your food choices just as much as like your effort. But, we also call it long, slow duration. I have a little fun with saying it's LDS, but there's all these different recommendations. Is it 70 minutes per week? Is it 90? At a certain age, it should be 110 minutes. Gosh, if you can just 2 or 3 days a week get enough activity to create a light sweat for a sustained period of time, anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes, you're winning.
Yeah.
And then that can build.
Absolutely. And if you can bring it back to the metabolism of how this really works. So the biggest misconception with that statement that at 70% is your fat burning zone, that's where it starts. So you have to be burning fat if you're working at that level, because you're burning oxygen. But if you work above 70%, that oxygen system is still burning fat. Yeah. Now you're also burning sugar.
Yeah.
So it's not like you
switched.
Yeah, you switched it. Like you just added another layer.
Yep.
So the aerobic system, which is the oxygen fat burning system, is going to continue to be working in the background, even if you have peaks like a HIIT program far beyond the 70%. You start dropping down below the 70% and you don't need your aerobic system to be as active, then that might have an impact on you. But 70% and above is important. So don't think, I can't go run a sprint or I can't do something more high intensity, puts me at 80 or 90%. That would be the wrong choice.
Wrong choice.
And I'd ask you if you've ever seen a fat sprinter.
Well, I doesn't like that.
You'd probably say no.
Well, and the other beautiful part to that is, say you're going to go for a 45-minute walk, and it's both stairs and hills, and it's got some climbs, and you kind of go fast and slow. The more of a sweat you create, you'll also get what they call an afterburn. So when you're done with the activity, your body will continue to burn for a while if it was a pretty high energy pace. If it was a very slow pace, because you're in your fat burning zone, when you're done walking, you're done burning.
Yes.
But you get the afterburn if it was a great sweat. So that's the other piece. Like, hey, do you want to only work for 30 minutes? Or if you work kind of hard for 30 minutes, you actually might be working for another 30 after because of the afterburn. So, I think it is a misnomer to say, well, don't go too strong because you're going to start burning sugar. No. But you also have to build. Start off small and then build the habit, and then you'll build capacity, you'll build strength, you'll have improved cardiorespiratory fitness to then endure longer bouts and higher exertion. And you know what? This just happens naturally. When people instill a good habit, they naturally start working a little bit harder because they have an improved capacity to do it. The RP stays the same. The rate of perceived exertion will usually stay the same. Let's call it a 6 out of 10. But since your capacity improves, you start just doing more because your body's getting healthier. So if you focus on the habit and the behavior, over time, you will accomplish your goal. But if you kind of push too hard too soon, you'll peter out, have an injury, or lose the will because it's just too damn hard.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Think about this when you're looking at your movement plan. It needs to have a couple of different categories in it. So you have to have some sort of probably taxing exercise like weightlifting or weight training where you're actually taxing the muscle in an effort to grow it. And then you want to do something that's kind of in either a HIIT type workout or some type of sport type workout where you have this increased sweat, you have this increased intensity, have some balance, have some reaction, make your body have to do something a little bit more. And then the third component is the most forgotten component because everybody's been trying to do gym stuff for 40 years and play sports. But the third component is that we don't get enough general movement throughout the day. So that whole 10,000 steps a day thing, or like 6 hours of movement during your day where you're either standing or you're walking or you're just doing regular light activity, that's aerobic in nature and that's going to burn more fat. So some of the best cardiovascular guys in the world have really identified that that's one of the biggest pillars as far as longevity, life quality, all of those things is this kind of constant regular motion in the day, which is where that 10,000 steps a day thing came from. But that combined with some HIIT things and some strength training is really what you're after. So for, there's no one that's better than the other. All three really, really get it done. Probably if you're going to do one thing more than anything, if you can get that moving 6 to 8 hours a day, getting that 10, 15,000 steps a day, and it's probably going to be the biggest impact that people do in every other country that actually make the biggest difference. But that's almost impossible to do, depending on your job here in the U.S.
Years ago, I had that slide that had a kind of a souped-up Dodge Challenger.
Oh, yeah.
And what I love about that and what we're speaking to is that if you think of the strength of your body as really the size of the engine, obviously if it's more of a gas engine. So the size of the engine's, how big the space is that allows the piston to move. And that more or less substantiates the horsepower of what that engine can do. So if strength is horsepower, then to some degree, your heart health is how fast that engine can go. What is the speed of the RPMs that allows you to propel the vehicle or the body upward. So bear with me here. Strength is the size of the engine. Your cardiorespiratory ability is the capacity of that engine working very fast and allows it to recover off of stress over and over and over again. So when we talk about movement, we're now talking about the tires. If you don't have good movement through your skeleton, through your fascia, through your muscles and tendons, then you're literally driving with your tires either towed in or angled. You're not going to have good traction, but more importantly, you're going to burn right through the tread. If you don't have good movement, you will burn through the tire in an unhealthy way in your longevity. Well, we don't get to change out our new tires unless you know a really good orthopedic surgeon. So there's only a few spots where you can change your tires, and they're not very good at the low back. So, if it's the knee and the hip and you want an early replacement, you can dismiss everything I just said. But if you don't want to have a replacement like my parents, and focus on good movement, that's your best way of allowing your joints to gel together in a congruent way that spreads the stress quite like peanut butter on toast, the healthiest peanut butter, of course, and let that spread so that the stress is endured by the whole joint cartilage system, not just one focused part. If we do that, we get early arthritis. If we have damage in the body, we're more likely to not move well. We'll get early arthritis. So the movement part is to ensure the health of the total skeleton and our joints. And healthy movement requires flexible muscles and tendons, flexible fascia, and an appropriate amount of joint motion, and most importantly, coordination and good motor control and stability so that when we move in a healthy way. It's a lot harder to fill that bucket. This is where we make all our money because we grade people's movement. And I don't think AI is going to be good at that for quite a while. So it does take a sharp eye to look at the body and how it moves and say, that's good. I like that. that has movement that will instill better longevity and a better health span in that bucket, which is essential.
Yeah. It is a complex field. All right. Well, I hope this guys gives you guys some help. Remember, you got 4 big pillars here. So you got nutrition, you've got sleep, you've got stress management, you've got movement. Hopefully, gave you some ideas there that you can run with. We wrote a blog about this. You can check the blog out at KIMEperformance.com. We have many other articles on there as well. But give a shout out there. If you think this can help you, or if it can help somebody else, if you learned something today, if it stimulated your thought in some way, and you think somebody else could benefit it, please share. Please share the podcast with them. We'd love to be able to reach out to them. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next round. Thank you.